You do not see where people start. You only see where people are. Most of us do not see what is possible for us. We only see where we are, where we start. I would say you can actually see how far you've come. It's very hard to see how far somebody else has come.
This person is more focused on making progress and getting to her vision, so she doesn't really feel ahead of schedule until she looks back. And I think that's kind of what we're saying is like, once you look back, it's like, whoa, look how far I've come.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, number 1035. You shouldn't expect everyone to believe in you. Today, for episode number 1036, happy Monday. Do you even realize how far you've come? So this is an episode that we have definitely done in the past, but much like the growing pains episodes that we've done, I think it's worth revisiting because if Alan and I can lose sight of this, or I'll just speak for myself, if I can lose sight of this, I think that anybody can lose sight of this because not everybody has the unique opportunity we have to look back at content. That's something I say very often, but Alan and I were I think we were on the team meeting on Wednesday. So we have a team meeting every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Alan, I think you started the call by saying we're not just a podcast anymore. This is a real legitimate business and we have all these other things going on. And I think that when you said that, that made me reflect. I had that moment where I reflected and said, and I think I did it later that night too. I thought to myself, I remember when we were doing one episode a week, and that was kind of it. That was really all we were doing is we didn't have any clients. You and I were spending a lot of time in the gym, and we were probably spending a lot of time hanging out, but that was 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago that you and I started this thing. And again, I'm getting so many unique perspectives and breakthroughs from being on other shows, and a lot of them ask, what was it like in the beginning? And it's like, I was tracking 3 habits. I was tracking like 3 habits and I wasn't learning much. I was journaling, but I wasn't doing a lot of work. We weren't making a lot of progress. And I see this a lot with some of our group coaching members. We did our first call for our 7th round, and we have 2 people in our latest group who have done group coaching prior. And one of them in particular was on the call. The other person ended up missing the call. But we said on that call, we're so incredibly proud of all of the progress that you've made, not just while working with us, but just externally. It looks like you're really doing a lot of amazing things. You have a podcast and you have multiple small businesses that you're running. And in retrospect, I really wish I said to that person, and I have the opportunity to do it, so I probably will, but do you even realize how far you've come? Do you realize how much has changed since the first round of group coaching for you? If you're out there, do you realize how much has changed since you started your job? Do you realize how much has changed since you graduated college, graduated high school, got in a relationship, started tracking your habits, started going to the gym, started your business, started your podcast, started your coaching program? Do you realize how much has changed for you? I think we lose sight of that. And I do think at a deeper level, Alan, I think many people, including myself, we struggle to own the wins of how much we've changed. It's like, well, it's nothing too crazy. It's like, well, what do you mean it's nothing too crazy? You've built multiple businesses, or you've really, really, really gotten to the point where you're capable of putting up boundaries with loved ones. That's huge. That's a huge accomplishment for all human beings. So today we're going to jam on that. I think this will be as cool for us as it is for you because we don't often look back on the show, especially on the air. But I thought from the experience of group coaching, from the team call where you said we're no longer just a podcast, we're like a real business that's switching into a tech company in the future, like that sort of stuff, that makes me realize how far we've come. So I wanted to share that with the audience today and help them reflect on their past as well.
It's pretty cool. I was on a coaching call earlier, and this person was talking about self-worth and their challenge with it, and how they feel like they feel good about some of their accomplishments, but don't really give themselves a lot of credit. And they also said something along the lines of this: I feel confident in my skills and my abilities, but I don't know if I feel as confident in who I am. And I had her close her eyes on the call, and I said, okay, I want you to compare yourself to this other person. And I'll keep it anonymous, but this other person, we'll call it Jane. Compare yourself to Jane. Compared to Jane, how do you feel about where you are in your career? And she smiled, and she's like, oh my God, I mean, I've come so far in comparison to Jane. And I said, I'm not trying to be mean here. The comparison thing, it's only dangerous if you don't understand it. And this is nothing against Jane in this anonymous thing too. I said, okay, now I want you to compare yourself to what you normally compare yourself to, which is what you are capable of long term. And she went, oh. I said, see, this is how you normally feel. Behind. This is how you normally feel, because compared to what you're capable of, you are absolutely, unbelievably behind. Compared to this person's goals are very, very large. You're way behind. And that's why you hired me. You're behind and you want to accelerate the process. Awesome. But when you do look back at Jane, your close friend growing up, it becomes very, very clear how far you've come. And so I'm not telling every one of our listeners to compare to Jane or their own proverbial Jane. What I'm saying is that if you are growth oriented, and if you do have big goals, and if you do want to maximize your potential, and you do want to maximize your contribution, you're most likely spending most of your focused on where you want to go, and not a lot of focus on how far you've come. And I know that I'm very guilty of that as well. And while I do believe it's important to consistently compare yourself to what you're capable of, because that's going to create growth and aspiration and challenge and learning and coaching and all that kind of stuff, I also think it needs to be balanced with, oh, wow, look at how far we've come. And so for everybody, I think, Kevin and I are going to kind of contemplate what the beginning of this journey was like versus now, but I want everyone to be thinking about where they were 5 years ago, or where they were 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. And it is crazy because I think most of the time, Kev, I do focus most of my time and effort and energy and consciousness. My main focus is on the dream and the vision and the goals. And I really don't think that's a bad thing. I think obviously that's important. And the last thing I'll say here before we kick it to Kev is, you have your past, you have your present, and you have your future. There's 6 ways to look at these. You can dwell on the past. You can, I guess we'll do 3. You can dwell on the past or learn from it. That's why I said 6. You can dwell on the past or learn from it. Okay? You can enjoy the present or build in it. And you can worry about the future or create the future. Those are kind of the 6. And I think that Kevin and I, on this journey, this podcast journey, we spend a lot of our consciousness on trying to create a brighter future for ourselves and others. And I think that future orientation is a really good thing. But I think it's always fascinating for me when you do these episodes and you came up with this topic where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's take a minute. Let's look back. And it is crazy because it's like, yeah, we were doing 1 episode a week at one point, and you did 25 this week. So
do you know what another interesting thing is? I was on a call with, so NLPS, we coach Bianca and Emilia, Evolve Ventures. And I was talking to them, and they are at the lake house. Yeah. And last night they were like, Bianca said to Emilia, I told Emilia I'd like to go out for dinner tonight to celebrate, because they're having their little leadership retreat. And I said, I remember, and this was so weird for me. I said, I remember Alan and I were on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, after we interviewed Dr. Nikki Starr, and I said that to Alan. I said, I would really love to get a fancy dinner tonight to celebrate. And I was joking. I was like, but Alan, rejected me. I felt neglected in that moment. But it was interesting. It was very much a mirror of, they just opened their business account. Like they just they're becoming an LLC. It's like, oh my goodness. It seems like that was so long ago. So that was one of the other reasons I was super excited to do this, because I think when you get to see somebody else start something that you're already years into, it brings back those memories. It brings back those emotions. Friday night, I worked, I don't remember how many hours it was. It was probably like another 16 or 17 hour day. And it was like 7:30 at night. I grabbed the Guinness. I poured a tall glass of Guinness, and I went and sat on the porch, on our porch. And it was dark, and it was like there was a nice wind. It was nice and comfortable. And I remember looking out into the woods, and I was like, wow, that was a powerful week. To Alan's point, I did 25 podcast episodes, 7 of our own, 1 of Podcast Growth U, and then however many, 17 other shows. And that's not counting coaching calls. That's not counting gym sessions. That's not counting the stuff I do. And it was a very surreal moment of, 5 years ago, there's no way I would have expected this. I would not have understood that this was going to be what life looked like. And it was just this interesting moment for me of, wow, we have come so far. We have come so far. And it was very interesting. And I already had this episode chosen, so that just speaks more to it. But I do think of it like, I mean, you can use any number of analogies really, but I think many of us look what's left. What is left? How much is left? How much time is left? How many courses are left? How many days are left? How much time is left? We don't look at how much we've accomplished. We look at what there's left to accomplish. And I think that oftentimes when you feel a huge sense of accomplishment, you see how much you've accomplished. And I think that if you took that time, you gave yourself that opportunity if you're out there. Now, again, there's a lot of people who they might dwell too much on the past and say, well, I've come, or too much on the progress. I've come so far, I can take the day off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. Now, that's your prerogative if you want to do it. You know us, we're NLU in your pocket every day. We think 1% improvement every day is the way, but that is the other end of it. But I do think more people than not are guilty of not looking at the wins. They're not looking at the wins. They're only looking at the wins that they have to knock down. They're looking at the dominoes they have to knock down. But you got to understand, there's dominoes behind you that got you to where you are today. And it's awesome. We're at an interesting place in business where there's a lot of things that are, like we have an app, Optimal app. If you don't have it, you want it, please. I think it's in the show notes, but that's weird. Like we have an app. I never thought that was going to happen. And I think that, I think that a lot. I got to stop that. I got to be better than I am.
Be grateful for where you've come. I'm kidding.
It's definitely a filler for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Bonnie here. I just wanted to share my experience with group coaching and some of the things that I got out of it. So going into group coaching, I was not tracking any habits at all. And I had sort of jumped on board habit tracking here and there, knowing it was a good idea, but not sort of ever succeeding with it. And so now some of them have become habits. I'm happy to say I wake up, I have a glass of water without even thinking about it anymore. So now I think it's probably time to gear up and increase my water intake or change the water one a little bit, something like that. And so I highly encourage people to jump into group coaching. There's so much information that you will get out of it. I recommend bringing a notebook to all of the sessions and taking lots of notes, asking lots of questions, and rewatching the videos, because it is the video coaching part is just packed with information. I also really recommend that you check in with your accountability buddy and sort of lift each other up throughout the experience, because there's lots of momentum, it's really exciting, and then it gets hard. And so stick with it and carry on, and your life will be better for it. Okay, take care.
I think back, shit.
It's like me with essentially.
Yeah. Can I say I think when I'm actually thinking?
You say whatever you feel, brother.
I reflect back onto the times where I didn't know if we were going to make it. I had those times where I said this recently, I just got to get through today. I got to get through this week. I got to get through this month. I got to find a way to pay rent, whatever it may have been. And it doesn't seem that long ago. And that's because it wasn't. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago. But now seeing where we are and the business and the systems, and it's just wild. It's wild. It's really...
Remember when we weren't CEO and CFO?
I do.
It's so weird to think about, right?
I do.
It's
You
like
forget.
crazy.
You forget the things that you were so excited for. I remember when we opened our bank account together. I remember that.
Yeah.
We went to the bank and it was awesome.
Yeah,
It was awesome. And we got a credit card and all that.
That was back when you actually could go into banks.
Yeah,
and,
banks had people
meet
at them.
humans, right?
And that was amazing. I remember when we got our first podcast studio. That was amazing. But it's almost...
Do you
it's
remember
almost,
moving the equipment from my sister's old bedroom down to the basement?
I do.
That was cool. Yeah. With the white backdrop instead of the black one.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely much lighter. It definitely helped the YouTube episodes look better.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is I'm working with a lot of new podcasters. I had a call today with a client who just started with us. Awesome client. And it was interesting because it was the first time I leaned into, I'm just going to tell you how it is. I'm just going to tell you how it is. Tell me where you want to go, and I'm going to tell you how it is. And that's a new thing for me. This client said, I want to have 15,000 downloads a month. Is that realistic by the end of the year? I said, no, it's not. I wish it was, but we're getting 20,000. Like, we're getting 25,000. We're on our way up to the 30s. No. It's going to take longer. But that helped me realize how far my confidence has come as a podcast coach. And I think that if you're looking for perspective, it's out there. Even since I decided we were going to do this episode on Thursday or Friday, look at how many stories I have. It's because I'm looking for perspective and I'm finding perspective. So that even goes deeper into the episode we did on manifestation and the power of focus, the number one or the most important part of manifestation, whatever it was. I'm just
One thing I feel compelled to say, and this is something I've started to notice a lot more than I used to. This client that I was on the phone with earlier, who's struggling with, she's like, yeah, I feel like I have this persona, and I don't, I feel like maybe my ego is running me, and I feel like I'm still fearful to not be good enough. And in my head, it's like, it's so interesting that you're saying all this because you are so much less ego driven than most people. But the reason why is because she's so humble in those truths. So it's almost like, well, yeah, sometimes I feel like an imposter, and it's like there's an interesting understanding that I've come to. Some of the people who really do think that they are far ahead, some of the people that really do look at the wins, like often, and they think they're way ahead, really aren't. They really, really aren't. And it's the people we're talking to in this episode of like, you don't look at your wins enough. You're actually probably farther ahead than most people. And that's one thing that we've found too, interviewing people. It's like some of the people who are the most quote unquote confident, and most of the time it's fake confidence, they're actually not ahead. They're actually not accomplishing as much as you think, but they're really good at feeling good about themselves. And I think that this person, I was on the phone and I'm like, it's so interesting that this person thinks her ego runs her. Because, yeah, I mean, of course, a little bit, and of course mine does too, but it's like not nearly compared to most people. I had one person on book club too. She said, yeah, I have like these narcissistical qualities, and in my head, I'm like, the fact that you're saying that means you kind of don't in a way. And it's like, and this person does a little bit, but it's not bad, not compared to most narcissists who think they're not, right? So there's a weird duality there too, and I think that that's another perspective to bring. If you do feel behind, you're actually most likely ahead long term.
As long as you're doing the work.
As long as you're doing the work.
As long as you're doing the work.
The key.
Because it's like, it's one of those things where if you're just out here jeffing all the time, it's a fine line. It's a fine line.
We'll go deeper on that, because the people that I'm referring to, they're humble in action, and they aren't always feeling great about their day-to-day, but they are winning on the long term.
Yeah.
I have one client. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's more often than not the people who have the capability of reverse engineering and delaying gratification. And I think that's smaller. It might be a smaller subset of humans than you realize.
Okay. Well, this one client that I'm thinking of, it's a different client than the original one. I mean, she has made so much positive change in her life, Kev. It's like unbelievable. I mean, she sold her house and she got a new job, making more money, and she is creating this beautiful dynamic with her family. She's being truthful with her extended family. She's being more truthful with her ex-husband. And she's come so far, but she doesn't really feel like she's crushing it. You know what I mean? Like, from my perspective as her coach, she's crushing it, but she doesn't really feel like she's crushing it. And I think that that's kind of what I want to bring to the table here a little bit is this person is more focused on making progress and getting to her vision, so she doesn't really feel ahead of schedule until she looks back.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're saying is like, once you look back, it's like, whoa, look how far I've come. But if you're constantly doing that in a weird way, you are going to fall behind. And that's, I think, the interesting duality about this.
Yeah. My thing would be, if you're out there listening to this, I would sit down and write out, where was I? If you break it into health, wealth, love, where was I a year ago? Where was I 3 years ago? Where was I 5 years ago? One of two things is going to happen. You're going to like your answers and they're going to surprise you, or you're not going to like your answers and they're going to surprise you. Either way, one of our favorite quotes, no matter what, you're going to get feedback. You can either get it along the way or you can get it all at once at the end. At least you can course correct. At least you can course correct. I think that's an important part. I had somebody say that recently. They said, 2 years ago at this time, I had blank amount in my bank account. Now I have like way less. Well, there are, extenuating, is that a word? Extenuating circumstances that have created that, but maybe you don't realize how far you've not come in that arena. That's okay.
Exactly.
That's the first step. Awareness is the first step.
I know we got to jump, but Kev, I was on the phone with someone else who booked a call after a training. This was a free session. And I showed the unlisted video. So the very first YouTube video that I ever created was called Real Life Superheroes. And it's terrible. But I showed her that video, and then I went to our latest episode. And I said, see, there's 1,000 episodes in between, though. Mm. So the first one, when you look back, it's absolutely cringeworthy. And we've come so far, though. But along the way, it's not like we ever were like, oh, wow, we're super ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
So I just think, again, I know I keep hammering that point. I know your purpose with this episode was probably more of like, look at the wins.
Positivity.
Yeah, positivity. But with me, I think it's important to understand that if you do feel behind, you're probably not as behind as you think. That's what I'm saying. And you might be. But I think it's important because either way, you're going to get feedback when you look back. When Kevin and I look back at us 2 years ago in business, we are blown away by how far we've come. When we look back in fitness, not so much.
No, opposite.
Not so much. It's the opposite. And either way, the feedback is useful. So,
last thing I will say is a great quote that actually fits this episode. I don't know if I know the quote well enough to say it. It is my quote. I put the words together. I'm sure somebody else did at some point in history. People have been around for a minute. So I like to put it this way, Alan. You do not see where people start. You only see where people are. Most of us do not see what is possible for us. We only see where we are, where we start. I would say you can actually see how far you've come. It's very hard to see how far somebody else has come. I don't know where Steve Jobs started. I don't know where Beyonce started. I have no idea. I didn't know Beyonce until she was famous. I don't know where she started. She does.
Right.
She does. I know where I started, and I know where I am now. That's that's what you can compare to. I think it's important to compare to other people if you can do it in a positive way. But think about that. If you're looking at Alan and I 1,000 episodes in, I want you to look at your first episode, not our 1,000th. I want you to look at your first, and then your 15th, and your 30th, and that's the analogy I would use for wherever you are in life. Next level, nation. One of the most important parts of your growth, your self-improvement journey, your next levelness will be the people you surround yourself with. We have a private Facebook group that I believe has 617 or 618 next level humans in it. Please join if you are interested. Totally free, totally private. You can be the most authentic version of yourself, and the link is in the show notes to make it super simple.
Some of the conversations that Kevin and I were having and the things that we were putting on our vision boards and the things that we were talking about back then have come true. Many of them have. Many of them haven't yet, and we're still on the journey, but many of them have manifested. They have come true. They have been achieved. And one of the main things, Kevin and I are not very good at many, many things on this journey, but two things that we really do feel like we were strong in were clarity and consistency, and they go hand in hand. They really go hand in hand. Mm. And one of the reasons we've been so consistent is because we had clarity. We have a course online that talks about the 5 C's. Clarity and consistency are big time focused on. So there's 5 modules, 5 C's: clarity, commitment, community, consistency, and what was the last one, Kev? Confidence. Those are the 5 that made the biggest difference for us 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, those are the 5 that we were focused on. And we have a free online course. It's called the Next Level 5 to Thrive. And it's on the website. Click the link in the show notes. It's completely free. And let us know what you think.
Next Level Nation, tomorrow for episode number 1037. It is last week's live podcast. Is your self-worth too low? As always, we love you. We appreciate you. We are grateful for each and every one of you. Hopefully you have a wonderful Monday, a wonderful week ahead. And as always, at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.